Hello and welcome to the SCI-AI Podcast. This is episode number 36. Today, my guest is James Barrat. What a great honor to have James here. Hello, James. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Vivek. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. James is a great documentary filmmaker and author. He has written several books. The kind of podcast that I've done in the past, my idea of artificial intelligence and asking questions from experts and researchers in the field of AI was to understand whether this will be our last invention or not. Who other than James than to ask this question, who has written a book, Our Final Invention. So let's go ahead and get started with James. Why did you write this book? Why do you think it is our last invention?
Well, we humans have a mixed record with technology. Our pattern has been to innovate first and then do stewardship second. Right. create new inventions and then sweep up after them. It happened with nuclear fission. We split the atom and we got a lot of energy, but we also got terrible weapons that destroyed two cities. And right now we have a gun in our heads with several nations around the world threatening to use their nuclear weapons and wipe out millions of people. So you can't say overall nuclear fission has been a success. I think AI is following the same track. As the late Stephen Hawking said, in the short term, the problem is who controls the AI. And in the long term, the problem is, can the AI be controlled at all? And right now we're going through an AI revolution, and it seems inevitable to me that we will create machines within the next couple of decades that are more intelligent than we are. And as Arthur C. Clarke said to me during an interview 20 years ago, Arthur C. Clarke, the science fiction writer and physicist, he said, we humans steer the future not because we're the fastest creature or the strongest creature, but because we're the most intelligent. When we share the planet with a machine that's more intelligent than we are, they will steer the future. And I think that's a simple axiom that helps us understand the situation we're in right now.
That's right. And do you envision the fact that, like nuclear power and all the other weapons that we have created, although it is a great tool for us, it is helping our different kind of industries grow, like healthcare, like like finance, and like so many sectors that AI has penetrated. But do you envision that eventually it will become a weapon for the rich to fight against with each other, or the countries to fight against with each other? So something like China building AIs in such a massive scale.
Well, you've mentioned, there are a lot of benefits to AI. I mean, right now, everything that's electrified is becoming cognitized. Intelligence is being added to everything that's electrified. Everything in your house, all your appliances are getting smart. They have their own ISPN address. You can update them on the web. Your house itself is going to be intelligent. You'll have an intelligent house. It'll be part of the smart energy grid. And then, there's going to be, there are already smart factories where the products tell the factory what pieces they need, smart warehouses that are inventorying themselves, and then ultimately there'll be smart cities. So in the short term, I think we'll get a lot of interesting benefits. As you mentioned, healthcare has benefited, although some of that benefit has been overproduced. The radiology part is not working all that well. The diagnostic part is not working all that well. IBM's Watson just closed down its whole medical division because it wasn't working. Business analytics is the sky is the limit if we navigate the next 10 or 15 years well. So, but it's AI is like other technologies, is a dual use technology. Dual use means it's capable of great good, but also great harm.
Right.
And it's already being weaponized. We're seeing the development of autonomous battlefield robots and drones. So, like fission, it's being weaponized. I do think we'll be using it against each other. But yeah, I do. Imagine cognitive architectures that are very, very good at hacking and destroying. somebody could develop a weapon that could hack and destroy our banking system, that could hack and destroy our electrical grid and shut down everything, and that would be totally catastrophic. The United States is composed of several electrical grids. If you shut down any one of them, the others could help a little bit, but you would have vast areas that would have no power at all, and that really, without refrigeration, a lot of people die. Right. So I see its weaponization happening, but I think my thesis with Our Final Invention, the book, is that the ultimate competition isn't between America and China or Microsoft and Apple. It's between humans and machines. And I think we have 10, 20 years to figure out who's going to win.
Right. I just don't understand, James, why is it that experts in the field of AI, like true actual researchers, brush it out, this idea that AI can be dangerous for us? They think, is it too naive to think that, one day, if it seriously becomes so strong, then think about it like a bad, evil person, something like a Hitler. I mean, Hitler, imagine if he's a robot with an AI algorithm in his head. Why can't he decide to do something wherein all the protocols, all the rules that other countries will set up in terms of security and others, he can still breach them by sort of getting that kind of power and generate that kind of support for himself. So why is it that people think that so naively about it?
Well, a couple of things. One, you mentioned a robot Hitler. The intelligence that I'm really afraid of isn't even in robot form. It's a cognitive architecture that has access to the web. Yeah. It will be decentralized, so it will be impossible to turn off. It will be able to travel anywhere. It can hack into all our systems. That's the one I'm scared of, the one that doesn't have a body. Its body is basically everywhere. As Elon Musk is the one who said, we could end up with a dictator that never dies. We could end up with a Hitler in a cognitive architecture that's impossible to kill. And we could be under his thumb. I think people, especially technologists, they suffer from a bias, a cognitive bias called the familiarity bias. And that's basically the idea that nothing like this has happened before, so it can't happen. That's what they think. That's A. And B, they're all being paid a lot of money by the technology companies not to say the sort of inconvenient truth that our technology may get ahead of us. This is not what you want the president of Apple to come out and say, although it's very interesting. One of the co-founders of DeepMind, Demis Hassabis, I think I pronounced his name wrong, but he said a few years ago, he's worried that as we reach this point of no return where we create smarter than human machines, he's concerned that the tech companies who are building it will not be able to get together to make sure it's safe. They won't be able to get together and slow down their development to try and make that passage from smarter than human to thousands of times smarter than human, to make that safe. So even some founders, also Stuart Russell, Demis Hassabis is one. He was co-founder of DeepMind along with Shane Legg and some others. Stuart Russell, who wrote the standard text for AI called AI, A Modern Approach, is very concerned about this. We call it overall the control problem. How do you control something 1,000 or millions of times more intelligent than we are? So he wrote the standard book on the text everybody uses to teach artificial intelligence, and he says it's a impending problem. Bill Gates said in the short term we're going to get a lot of benefits from AI, but in the long term we may lose control. And he said, I don't know why more people aren't worried about it.
Right.
So we do have a lot of, Elon Musk has said many times, we're opening Pandora's box. AI is our greatest existential threat, the greatest threat to our existence. So a lot of people who are pretty smart about technology, including some of the founders of the modern techniques of AI, Stuart Russell was one of the people that really got deep learning going. They're concerned about this issue as well.
That's well said. And it's disheartening to learn that young people, because they can code well and because they're so pumped up about the idea of, well, we are going to transform the whole humanity by this, do not understand that till they achieve that kind of maturity, that historically, if you see, we have not built great things before we actually damage, make more damages for the humanity.
Yep. It's interesting. Again, with fission, we thought of fission back in the 20s and 30s when we weren't even sure it was possible. We thought, well, if we could split the atom, we would get free energy and this period of utopia would follow. But look what happened. And that's really where we are right now. You couldn't have told those people in the 20s and 30s, those physicists, you couldn't have told them that soon, within 20 more years, we'd wipe out entire cities full of people. And we would hold a gun to our heads for 50 years with the nuclear arms race. You couldn't have convinced them of that. Just like you can't convince the technologists of today that AI poses one of the most substantial threat.
Right. So from a great point, but if we come out from the tech part of it and philosophically, if we try to understand why humans have been always like that, do we first invent things and don't care about whether it can go wrong for humanity, and I don't care because I'm making a lot of money out of it? How do you think about that perspective?
Eliezer Yudkowsky has written a lot about AI and AI risk. I quote him a lot in my book, Our Final Invention. His name is Eliezer Yudkowsky, and he said a couple of things. One that's very interesting is he says, it's the most important thing for these people is to seem or to be important, who are developing this technology. So as long as they're important for their board of directors of their company, as long as they're important at the end of every fiscal quarter, and their stock prices are rising, as long as they're important, they're completely blind to danger. I think that's true as I said, of our civilization, but it's particularly true of the kinds of people who rise to the ranks of CEO of tech companies. They're paid in amounts that we can't even fathom, but that blinds them to a lot of the realities of this technology. I mean, there are obvious problems right now with data bias. The bias in data that there's a lot of algorithms that choose who can get into colleges. A lot of that is bias against minorities and women. There are algorithms that determine prison sentences, and in America, and because, especially in the state of Florida, Black people got longer sentences in years past. They used that very same data to create the current sentencing algorithm. So it's bias, and black people still get longer prison sentences, fewer paroles. I could go on and on. Amazon had a hiring algorithm that was biased against women. Amazon's a big player in AI. So because in the database they were using, or the data they were using, in that women were not equally represented. So there's that problem that's coming up. There's we've got 52 nations developing battlefield robots and drones. A handful of them are developing autonomous battlefield robots and drones that make the kill decision without a human in the loop. And these are probably being tested right now. It was a long time, our CIA had a long secret war in Central Asia using drones, piloted drones. But it wouldn't surprise me at all to learn that autonomous drones are in the air right now, that pick targets and make the kill decision without humans. I know I've seen battlefield robots that are being developed, and the goal is to make them autonomous, so they fight independently of a commander. you've also got, another huge downside is by 2030, according to the accounting company Gartner and Company, AI and automation will take 30% of all jobs, not just blue collar jobs, repetitious jobs like factory work or truck driving, but white collar jobs like lawyers, doctors, businessmen of all kinds. So there's a very obvious downside to this technology that I felt obliged in Our Final Invention to point out, because so many technologists like Ray Kurzweil, who I admire a lot, he's a great inventor, really a legitimate genius. He won the Thomas Edison Prize for inventing here in America. Even though I admire him, I think that he's been looking at this through rose-colored glasses. I think he's only been seeing the positive, beneficial side.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. So then my next question on top of that is, and I'm not trying to be a fear monger, but are we doomed because of this? And is that why Elon Musk and several others said that we need to have an alternative? Because what we are doing on Earth, not just from a climate change perspective, but even from a technology war perspective that is going on about, like you mentioned, autonomous drones and all, are we doomed in another 25, 50 years? Do we need to secure that so that humanity doesn't get extincted and we need to find an alternate home for ourselves?
It's incredibly naive of Elon Musk to think that AI wouldn't follow us to our new home. Imagine something 1,000 times more intelligent than we are. Certainly it can figure out how we got to Mars. It's probably it would be on board the spaceship anyway, as some kind of cognitive architecture. I mean, the best way to get to Mars would be to have an extremely smart pilot that was AI and could stay awake all those 3 years that it took to get there. Plus, there's many problems about traveling to Mars that we could really use AI to figure out, like the whole radiation problem, and then the terrible effects that happen to the human body under zero gravity. So it's crazy to think that going to Mars is going to save us from AI. In terms of ruining this planet and moving on to another one, I don't think that's smart. I think you should take all the money headed for Mars and invest it in battling climate change, which AI may also be helpful in doing. I think it's. I don't see why we need to be a spacefaring culture. I think these guys have watched too much science fiction. We're going to have 10.5 billion people by 2050 in the world, and we really, really don't know how to feed them. Right now, we have a terrible food security problem. We have, if you take 8 cities the size of Chicago and fill them with children, that's how many children die each year from malnutrition in the world. 8 massive cities of 7 million each year. That seems to me to be a bigger problem than trying to go to Mars.
It's so amazing to listen to this counter view, because somehow all of the world follow one man's vision. I mean, you cannot say that it's completely wrong. He has his own vision and ideas behind it, that somehow we will kill each other. Why not make a copy of ourselves so that we can secure from being extincted? But what about the fact that the same humans will go there, and who will protect them from not getting extinct?
Well, what makes him think that suddenly going to a new planet will make us solve all our problems? I mean, it's the same species that's going to be going there. Right. I think I'm glad about what he's doing with reusable rockets. I think that's amazing. And I think Elon Musk he really is a visionary and a genius, because he's revolutionized electronic cars, he's revolutionized batteries, and he's revolutionizing rocket travel. So you can't blame him for that. But I think this obsession with trying to inhabit another planet is too far.
Right. Well, we'll see how it goes in the future, and whether we will be able to go there or not. But if we come back to AI, James, what is your opinion of when we go from a tool-based AI to human level intelligence AI, which is also called the artificial general intelligence or super intelligence. What do you think that that's going to happen or not? And if you think that it's going to happen, how catastrophic can it be for us?
Well, right now, I'm following the development of AI, and it's very interesting because we're stuck in a paradigm that's all about deep learning and neural networks. And neural networks are very roughly modeled on the human brain. And deep learning is just kind of an advanced neural network. And they've created some pretty amazing programs. There's one called GPT3. They claim that it's general intelligence already. It does 604 different things. But there are obviously some problems with it. It's not really general intelligence.
Right.
It does 604 things, 50% of them at an expert level, but it doesn't do everything reliably. GATO is the program, the architecture that does 604 things.
Wow.
Yeah, but it doesn't do them all well. It doesn't do them reliably, so you couldn't put it in a totally system secure environment where it had to be reliable 100% of the time. It doesn't have any common sense or knowledge. It could finish a sentence for you, and so could GPT-3. It could finish a sentence for you like the flowers were beautiful because they were blank, and you might fill in that with red. But it doesn't know what red is. It doesn't know what flowers are. It doesn't understand the relationship between red and flowers. What it does know is that statistically, if you have giant volumes of English language, red follows flower frequently. And red, beautiful, and flower are found in a lot of sentences. So, but it doesn't have any common sense. It doesn't know that you can cup your hands or you can pour tea into a cup. It doesn't, they made it small. It's actually smaller. GATO is smaller than GPT-3 or some of the other big architectures because I think they want to put it in a robot eventually. So they need to keep it fairly small. It's a stepping stone on the way to general artificial intelligence, but it's not there yet. But I think, if they use some additional insights from AI, reinforcement learning, and some others, some good old-fashioned programming, or what they call knowledge engineering, expert systems, etc. Artificial general intelligence is certainly not out of sight. I think GATO is a step in that direction. Well, there was a statistician in the 1960s. His name was I.J. Good, and I got my title, Our Final Invention. Once we create machines, it's a famous quotation. He says, once we create machines that are smarter at humans at everything we do, they'll also be smarter than all humans at developing artificial intelligence. And so the pace of intelligence will increase. The intelligence of this machine will far outstrip our own intelligence. And that idea is called the intelligence explosion. And I think, so the stepping stone is you get to artificial general intelligence, and then you have what's called a short or a long takeoff, or what's the next step after you get machines as smart as us? The next step is they get smarter and faster, but at what pace? If they're now developing AI, if they're doing the AI research and development, then the pace will be very quick because they operate 24/7. They'll be smarter than we are. Ray Kurzweil, the inventor and futurist, said that by 2029 we should have a computer that makes 800,000 trillion calculations per second. 800,000 trillion calculations per second. And that is what he thinks is the number of calculations per second in a brain. He wants to make it an online service. So basically human level intelligence as an online service. But imagine what you could do with that kind of brain. You could link 100 of these PhD quality brains together to battle climate change, to develop pharmaceuticals, to develop weapons. It would be an incredibly valuable product.
Right.
But that, what happens right after that is we suddenly are sharing the planet with machines that are 1,000 or millions of times more intelligent than we are,
Mm.
in a rational mathematical sense. I'm not talking about musical intelligence or kinesthetic intelligence like dancers have, but rational mathematical intelligence. The thing is, we just don't know how that, we will cease to understand what it is doing.
Right.
Stephen Hawking said it will be able to develop weapons that we don't understand. Nothing it does will we be able to understand. Right now, if you look around and you see animals that are maybe, I imagine I'm at least 100 times smarter than my dog. My dog doesn't really know what's going on most of the time. He knows when it's time to eat. He knows about 20 commands. But in terms of the big picture, no. That's the way it's going to be with us and super intelligence.
That's a great point to sum it up. The analogy with the dog. I mean, we will be the new dogs, and then the AGI will be the human.
Yeah.
And then
Well, I think there was a movie or a band called "We'll Make Good Pets," and that might be our highest aspiration, is to make good pets that aren't put down or gotten rid of.
right, that's absolutely right. And it's sad if that happens, because it most likely looks like it is going to happen, because I'm a keen learner of or listener of Joe Rogan's podcast as well, where he hosts many different personalities. In some of the podcasts, he mentions this with some theoretical physicists or AI researchers, is that where we are getting very slowly and steadily. Like, for example, every year we kind of upgrade everything that we are using today, like in terms of phones, the laptops, our clothes, our technology, everything gets updated. And
Yeah.
this is going somewhere, and we don't know where it is going. And once we are not in control of that going, then what will happen to us? And that's where the fear is, that AI will take us to that place where we will be the dogs and they will be thinking everything, and then we have no control over them, because dogs cannot control us anymore.
What is the solution? And I think
Right.
there was a one presidential candidate during the last election. His last name was Yang.
Yes, Andrew Yang. Yeah.
Andrew Yang, yeah, he actually had artificial intelligence on his platform. He had a policy. He wanted to start regulating AI, and I think we developed, once we had a lot of nuclear weapons, we developed the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and they have the power to look at nuclear refineries and make sure they're being run properly, make sure they're not refining uranium when they're not permitted to, but also to look down nuclear silos and make sure that rockets or missiles are being maintained properly and not abused. We need that for artificial intelligence. We need a group of scientists who are able to go into the labs of DeepMind and Alphabet and IBM and Apple and Facebook and Amazon and look at exactly what they're doing. What does their state-of-the-art AI look like? They often share that information, but in the future they won't be inclined to. And we need to be able to see that those algorithms and see their power well before they reach human level intelligence. So that's, I think, what we have to do.
Yeah, something like OpenAI, I think Elon Musk and others are already doing it, creating a regulatory body for AI.
Sort of. It's sort of. You know what they did? They started out being OpenAI, and they wanted,
Right.
they were very smart. They hired people and paid them a lot of money. They hired them away from other AI organizations, but they realized that they had such good products that they wanted to make money from it suddenly. And they kind of sold their soul to the devil. They divided the company into two parts. One part is for profit, and they promised people the return was incredible. They said, "We are trying to create human level intelligence in a machine, and we will pay when we reach that point. We will pay every investor 1,000 times what they invested." So Microsoft Corporation turned around and invested $1 billion.
Wow.
So they got a lot of money suddenly, and they're now really more or less a for-profit organization. I think they might have their ethical heads on straighter than most others. Google when it was DeepMind was sold to Google, part of the contract was that they would set up an ethics committee to govern AI. They did, but they had two very prominent ethicists, Debrew and Mitchell, I believe the names were, two women, and they came up with some complaints about how much when they were training, when Google, or when DeepMind, owned by Google, was training one of their programs, just during the training period, it was using the energy of 20,000 homes. Neural nets are incredibly energy intensive. Mm-hmm. So the first woman, Gebru, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, wrote about it, and then they also wrote that the data that was being used in some of their programs was suffering from anti-woman bias. Both of them were fired. So both of them were Google set up an ethics board and then fired them. So I think that's unfortunately the future of ethics boards and these companies. That's why they can't be trusted to govern or supervise themselves.
Right. Then I'm a little bit hopeful as well, James. When looking and talking about AGI, the reason why I say this is that why we developed, I think, intelligence is because of a lot of factors. Evolution is one of them, and then language, and then several other factors, because of which we become conscious, and our environment, our very, very good environment that we live in, and also evolution. I think similarly, if we do not give these algorithms the ontology, the epistemology, and the philosophical concepts of how consciousness came into us, I don't think we will be able to build the general intelligence that some of the researchers are hoping for. But I mean, I give it to you. What do you think about it?
Well, yeah, I agree with you, but I don't think their goal anymore. Well, it's a complicated question, because I think on the one hand, their goal is to create human-level intelligence in a machine and human-like intelligence. And it's a big question. It's an outstanding question. Is consciousness even necessary for intelligence?
Right.
Do we have to be? Is reflection and awareness of self a necessary quality for an intelligent machine? Does knowledge of what knowledge is? Does a theory of knowledge, is that required? Do they have to know about the nature of being and the relationships between different things? Do they have to know, the study of knowledge, philosophy? That's a very good question. I think we know that they have to have at least common sense knowledge, because then if they don't have common sense knowledge, they'll make all kinds of mistakes. A good example of that is Isaac Asimov's book, I, Robot. And really, what people always point to the rules of robotics as being a good guide, but they're not a good guide. Asimov wrote that book to show conflicts among the laws, and the book is full of unintended consequences because the machines don't know common sense. Nick Bostrom created an idea called the paperclip maximizer, and it was if you asked an AI to create a factory that made paperclips, and those were the only instructions you gave it, it would start to repurpose all the atoms of the earth to make that factory and make paperclips until it had basically put paperclips throughout the universe. Because of this problem, it doesn't have what they call an ontology or database of common sense to make the wise decisions.
What is your opinion of when Elon Musk and Nick Bostrom and even Ray Kurzweil talks about it, and now it has been in mainstream media as well, the concept of whether we are living in a simulation or not? Do you think that we are living in a simulation? And if you think that it's an absurd idea, then is there any merit to it, because of the fact that, how can you say that it is not true when you don't have the enough evidence of we don't having it. So yeah.
Well, we could also be a dream in the mind of God, but I've got no evidence for for or against that. The whole idea is a little bit preposterous to me. The idea is that AGI and superintelligence has already happened, and because they wanted to understand their own genesis, they created a very, very, very high resolution simulation of the development of the universe, right up to the time they were born. It's what it is a thought experiment, but it's not a thought experiment with particular interest to me. I just think it's a little bit silly.
Right.
I don't think we're living in a simulation. I think that's if we were living in a simulation, then we'd have the possibility for something we all want, and that's eternal life. And I think we have a terrible fear of death. So living in a simulation holds out the possibility that we could, the simulation could go on forever. We could get a favor from the computer system and live longer, or we could rewind and live our life all over again. But I think it's just a little bit silly. Well, I'm writing a book about suicide right now. Suicide is an epidemic in America. Our suicide rates are incredibly high. They've risen by 1/3 since 1999. Wow. So I just made a film that'll be on PBS in September of this year, and then I'm writing the companion book now. After that, I'm going to write a sequel to Our Final Invention. So
awesome.
Thank you. I want to say thank you, Vivek, for the very interesting questions, and thank you for having me on.
Thank you, James. Really appreciate it. And you have a great day.
You too. Take care.